Welcome to Orox. Do you know why Elizabeth II was modern Britain's most unlikely queen? Let's get into details. The British monarchy's longest reign has ever come to an end with the death of Queen Elizabeth II. Elizabeth Alexandra Maylie Windsor was descended from royalty, but she wasn't meant to be the queen. That is, until a sequential of historical blunders put her in the sight of the most prominent monarchy in the world. On April 21, 1926, Prince Elizabeth was born on her grandfather's Mayfair home. She was the first child of Prince Albert, Duke of York, who later became King George VI, and the Duchess of York, née Lady Elizabeth Beauvais-Lyon, and was affectionately referred to as Lilibet. Margaret, her sister, was born on 1930, 4 years after she did. Victoria, Elizabeth's great-great-grandmother, ruled the British Empire for over 64 years, which was a record for a British queen. Elizabeth wasn't the monarch's rightful heir. She was the fifth in the line to succeed. But a slew of deaths gave her the position when she was just 18 years old. Elizabeth was third in the line for British throne during her grandfather's reign, after her father and her uncle Edward. Even though her birth sparked curiosity in the public, it was not anticipated that she would become queen because Edward was still a child and was most likely to be married and have his children, who would succeed Elizabeth in the line of succession. She passed her father in the line for throne after her grandfather's death in 1936, when her uncle became Edward VIII. After his anticipated union with the divorced socialite Wallis Simpson sparked a constitutional crisis, later that year, Edward abdicated. As a result, George VI, Elizabeth's father, ascended to the throne. Elizabeth became the presumed successor because she didn't have any brothers. The male preference primogeniture in force at that time would have made him the heir, apparently, and put him above her in the line of succession if her parents had later had a son. They were a close-knit family that spent a lot of time together, travelling between London and the royal homes in Balmoral and Sandringham, at that time unconcerned about the line of succession. The princess enjoyed close relationship with both sets of grandparents, Queen Mary and George V in particular. Elizabeth was 10 when throne was abdicated. She had grown up both in London and the surrounding countryside. Her huge, stylish home in London's Hyde Park neighbourhood had no security at all. The princess and her younger sister Margaret received their education at home from a variety of tutors. After her uncle abdicated in 1936 and her father succeeded him as King George VI, Elizabeth's life underwent a significant transformation. She abruptly moved to Buckingham Palace. Her freedom of movement was limited and her schooling was modified. Elizabeth's childhood was anything but regular. Despite Marian Crawford, her governess, trying to make it more normal by taking her and her sister on outings and even organizing scouting organizations out of the children of palace staff and a range of elite friends and family. The princess had supported to learn the country manners of a princess and become knowledgeable about the laws, customs and history of the realm she would one day rule. She acquired fluency in French, studied history with the royal archivist and received the religious instruction from the archbishops of Canterbury. The princess received education in music and foreign languages from visiting tutors as well as historical grounding from C.H.K. Martin, Rear Provost of Eton College. She and her sister Princess Margaret Rose, forcibly removed from their parents and forced to spend most of their time living in Balmoral Castle in Scotland, the Royal Lodge in Windsor and Windsor Castle during World War II. On the extent of her schooling, experts dispute. In 2019, royal correspondent Chris told the Daily Express that a monarch's accession must have been very tough for her, particularly given she had never been to school and never had that wide education that we perhaps now take for granted. Her father, who overcame his shyness, reserve, and shudder to become a well-liked national figure, also contributed. Elizabeth observed her father to gain knowledge for her upcoming position as the sovereign. Despite not being natural monarch and finding public speech difficult, George VI performed admirably. When the reluctant king passed away in 1952, Elizabeth succeeded him as the monarch. Princess Elizabeth travelled to South Africa at the beginning of 1947 with the king and queen. Following her return, news of her engagement to Prince Philip of Greece and Denmark's distant cousin, Lieutenant Philip Mountbatten of the Royal Navy, was made public. On November 4, 1952, she performed her first state opening of Parliament in addition to her regular royal duties. On June 2, 1953, she was crowned at Westminster Abbey. When her father passed away in February 1952, Elizabeth, then 25, became both the head of the Commonwealth and monarch of 7 separate Commonwealth nations: the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. The troubles in Northern Ireland, devolution in the UK, the end of African colonialism, and the UK's membership in the European communities and exit from European Union all occurred during Elizabeth's constitutional monarchy. Her realm changed in number throughout time as other lands attained independence and some realms established republics. In her several domains, Elizabeth had more than 170 prime ministers at her disposal. Among her several important trips and encounters were state visits to China in 1986, Russia in 1994, and the Republic of Ireland in 2011, as well as 5 Pope encounters. From 6 February 1952 until her passing in 2022, Elizabeth II reigned over the United Kingdom and other Commonwealth territories. During her lifetime, she served as Queen Regnant of 32 sovereign nations, and at the time of her passing, she was the ruler of 15 realms. She ruled for over 70 years and 214 days, the longest reign ever recorded for a female queen and the longest reign of any British monarch. Elizabeth was crowned in 1953, and in 1977, 2002, 2012, and 2022, respectively, she celebrated her silver, golden, diamond, and platinum jubilees. Support for the monarchy in the United Kingdom remained constantly high throughout her lifetime, as did her popularity, despite the fact that she occasionally dealt with Republican statement and media criticism of her family, particularly following the dissolution of her children's marriages and the death of her former daughter-in-law Diana in 1997. In 1950, Elizabeth was portrayed as a dazzling fairy tale queen when she was a young woman at the beginning of her reign. After the horrors of World War II, it was a moment of optimism, a time of advancement and success that heralded a new Elizabethan age. It was a very uncommon remark when Lord Uncrincham claimed in 1957 that her words resembled those of a priggish schoolgirl, which somehow resembles that public speaking was not a core strength of the princess. Elizabeth died at the age of 96, just a few days later on September 8, shocking both Britain and the rest of the globe. She was followed by Prince Charles, who became King Charles III. Then came the 10 days of national remembrance of her life and contributions that had been long planned as Operation London Bridge. Notably, the Queen lay in state for 1 day in Edinburgh's St Giles Cathedral and for 3 days in London's Westminster Hall, when a long queue of mourners formed outside the building, some of who waited for more than 24 hours to see the Queen's coffin. Sonia Berry, a childhood acquaintance, said in 2006 to Andrew Adelson of Sunday Telegraph that Queen Elizabeth would probably have chosen a different path for her life if she had the choice. Berry further said that woman would have been happily married and living in the country with her dogs and horses. It's lonely work because there is still a barrier between her and everyone, even when she gets along with them. The exception has always been the rule for the royal family. Until recently, succession often went in unexpected directions because of death, abdication, or a lack of direct heirs in main branch of the royal family. This unplanned yet fateful series of events ultimately led Elizabeth II to the throne. Elizabeth II has made it obvious that she must serve just like those who have gone before her. She addressed her future subjects in a radio address on her 21st birthday in April 1947, saying, "I declare before you that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be committed to your service and the service of our great imperial family to which we belong." Even though it wasn't a promise she wanted to make, she has kept it for more than 75 years later. She ruled for 70 years and 214 days, the longest reign ever recorded for a female queen and the longest reign for any British monarch.